Good afternoon, Mackenzie Lansing. Welcome on VH Berries.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am extremely grateful because we are in the Lansing decade and you undeniably have a poetic and lively force, and at every level of the building we are finding multiple layers of strata that pepper the concrete of characters with a clear sense of care in finding meaning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I am also doing good, and I believe that there is a book that can help to better approach the cornerstone of your story. A title with 6 vowels, 6 consonants, called Roberto Zucco, written by Bernard Marie Coltes.
Yeah, that's one of the first plays I ever did.
It was Mackenzie Lansing, as you just mentioned, one of the very first play that you did. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah. It was a project that a director in Villebon-sur-Yvette, where I grew up, really fell in love with the play, and he was looking for a younger actor, like 16 or so, to play the role of Delilah, and he kind of hopped around to a few different local theaters and ended up asking me to portray the role, and that was my first like quote unquote like professional experience.
Absolutely, Mackenzie Lansing, this is a cool thing. And right after escaping, the main character named Roberto Zucco is heading to his mother's house, and she immediately says, "Roberto, I've got my hand on the phone. I will pick it up and call the police." And Roberto says, "Open up," and she responds, "Never," leading Zucco to enter the house by breaking down the door. And I can make a direct parallel with your journey because as Roberto Zucco escape, you also escape as an artist. The script's old ink, rewriting tales on eternity's brink.
That's a very eloquent way of putting it. I don't know if I'd give myself that much credit, but I guess it's a parallel. Yeah, I guess so. I haven't really thought of it that way. Yeah, I mean, I think that the main, if there was any parallel to draw from the first play I ever did, it would probably be that it's about an anti-hero, and I think I play a lot of we'll say for complicated characters who can sometimes be viewed as villains. So in that sense, yeah.
Absolutely, Mackenzie Lansing. In that case, you are used to play anti-heroes, and the play itself does not have a specific city or country where the events are taking place. It has a more abstract and universal settings, which means that storyline could have happened in the Chester County.
I guess so. I guess you can decide that it happened anywhere because it's unspecific.
Furthermore, Mackenzie Lansing, I mentioned the Chester County, which is a fictional place because this is where the television series Mayor of Easttown is happening, and I would love to discuss about that exceptional and particular project. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I auditioned for Mayor of Easttown shortly before the pandemic. And when I booked it, I had no idea what it was I had booked. I didn't know the people involved with it. And later found out that Kate Winslet was attached to the project and some other really exciting people. Yeah, we shot in Pennsylvania. We spent a lot of time out there, and it was a really incredible experience. It was really amazing to be able to work with Kate Winslet, who had been an idol of mine for a really long time. And I was able to tell her, that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was the movie that made me want to become an actress, and so that was pretty cool. But above and beyond that, I think it was just really exciting to get to play a character that felt, complicated and had some parallels with me growing up, even though I wasn't a bully, but I was somebody who struggled a lot to find myself. And I think I saw that in Brianna, and so it was a really great experience. And to be a part of a show with such great writing is always, a privilege.
Absolutely, Mackenzie Lansing, being in the television show with such a great writing and by playing that character named Brianna Del Rasso, you also were facing the idea of preparing and playing an intense presence on screen because of the tension between Brianna and Mar, the character played by Kate Winslet. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you prepared for those frontal scenes?
Yeah, I can. We had a lot of rehearsals with Kate that were sort of talking about kind of viewing the show as an ensemble piece and thinking of it in terms that it is like all these characters know each other. They're from this small town, and kind of the history they might have with each other and how they've known each other for a very long time. Something that Kate said to me on set sort of jokingly was like, well, I think I've always hated you. She's like, not you, but I think I've always hated your character. So, we got to sort of discuss, which is pretty rare, I would say, for TV and film. Usually you do your homework alone. You show up to set, you hope it matches up. But I think we were really lucky that we were able to sort of do this work together and decide how we all knew each other and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. We, came up with a really dense backstory. And so it was really collaborative, which was great.
It was a very collaborative experience, Mackenzie Lansing. And when I was experiencing that piece of art, I also felt that silence was also a key component, which can be concluded by the idea that silence can have echoes.
Yeah, I think that with really good writing, you sort of... Brad Inglesby is an amazing writer, and I think he wrote this show with the intention to have it sort of flexible and able to move. And so I think he does a really great job of showing us instead of telling us. Like, there's not a whole lot of lengthy conversations about what Mare is like. You just kind of experience it and therefore feel like you know her and all these characters better. So I think he's really good at, he understands the medium that he's working in a way that is rare, and so he utilizes silence, as you're saying, in the sense that he sort of lets us just see what's happening and draw our own conclusions, which I think is pretty powerful.
This is a very important point regarding the silence and the use of it in the television series. And Mackenzie Lansing, I really like the name of the episode 6, which is Soar Must Be the Storm. But I could also convert it as Stripes Must Be the Shirt, because I noticed that both Brianna and Corals are wearing clothes with horizontal stripes.
Yeah, I never noticed that. I never noticed that. You're paying more attention than I am, because I didn't notice. I think we had a brief conversation during Mare of Easttown when we did like a consultation with like the costume designers, who were really incredible, and they were saying that they thought Brianna was a bit of a sneakerhead. You know what that is? Like someone who collects like brand name shoes. I think that was something that we had talked about, which is not related to the stripes, but interesting tidbit.
This is an interesting story, and Mackenzie Lansing, both of the characters that I mentioned may have similar horizontal stripes on their clothes, but they are definitely very different, and I would love to explore that very recent project named Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is a prequel to the original movie.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to shoot that. I think there are a lot of differences between those two characters, even though, as you were saying, I do tend to play a lot of characters who sort of have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, to say it nicely. But I think that maybe one of the most fundamental differences is that I think to put it in really simple terms, although this might seem surprising, I think that Coral is probably at her core a more sympathetic character. I think, because I think that Brianna, she probably has some stuff going on at home, some reasons why she is the way she is, but she's not dealing with such extreme circumstances. Whereas you look at Coral, if you really look at the way the Hunger Games are set up, she didn't have a chance, And I think that they do have similarities in sort of like their need to prove themselves, maybe urge to fight the system, but I think that Coral in a lot of ways, and I'm actually not so much getting this from my interpretation of the characters, but a lot of the feedback that I got from audiences is people were much more angry at Brianna than they were at Coral, surprisingly. I did not get any hate for playing Coral, but I got a lot of hate for playing Brianna, which is really interesting. It tells you a lot about society and like how people work. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just that it's interesting,
This paradox is very interesting, Mackenzie Lansing, and as you just said, Coral didn't had the choice because she was the female tribute from the district number 4 during those 10 editions of the Hunger Games. Can you tell us a little bit more about her personality and what is leading her in that storyline?
Yeah. So when we had discussions with our director, Francis Lawrence, I think that some of the things we talked about is this is sort of it's not just the origin story of Snow or of the Hunger Games. It's also the origin story, a little bit anyways, of, and this was something that we actually sort of found while we were on set, but of the career districts. We're at the beginning of the career districts. We're not quite in a world where people are volunteering to, go into the games. But we are in a world where certain districts have decided, well, if we're going to have to send our kids to go fight, we're going to make sure they win. So I think that Coral is not somebody who's happy to go into the games, despite what it might seem like. But I think she knows that if she's going to go in, she's not going to lose, which she does in the end. But I think in her mind, it's, she's a survivalist. And I think that is interesting because it's one of the big themes of all of the Hunger Games. But I think especially this one is how you respond to sort of life or death situations.
The character of Coral is indeed not very happy and grateful to be in that situation. And she even expressed it with that very particular quote, "Watch those screens, gorgeous, 'cause I may have missed you tonight, but your songbirds next on my list."
Yeah. I think that quote to me illustrates that in a twisted way, she has a really strong sense of what's fair and what's not. And I think to her, the reason she despises Lucy Gray so much, aside from maybe just feeling maybe envious of the fact that Lucy Gray has this innocence that she hasn't allowed herself to have, I think that quote illustrates that she's very upset that she feels, from where she's sitting, like Lucy Gray and Coriolanus Snow are cheating. That's where that vendetta comes from. Not just out of like a bloodthirst or something. I think for her, it's very much like, it sucks that we have to do this, but this is the way it is. And you are not allowed to try to play favorites to the audience or get a mentor to help you. So I think from where she's sitting, those are very much people who are breaking the rules, which I think is something she's against.
She is against breaking the rules, Mackenzie Lansing, and that feature film was filmed in both Germany and Poland, and you're giving the character of Coral a lot of confidence because she is a master of wielding the trident, which is her primary weapon. Can you tell us a little bit more about the preparation and the training, mastering that fighting and those fighting scenes?
Yeah. We had stunt training and all that, and we also had weapons training. So each of us sort of got several hours during the day in the months leading up before shooting to practicing yielding our weapon. I think there was something like 20 tridents. There were some that had, the big fork on the end, some without it, some that had foam ends so that I could actually fake stab people. And then I also just had like a whole bunch of sticks that I was given that were about the same weight and size so that I could like play around with them. And so more or less was taught some basics of what would be called bow staff. And I really loved it. It was so much fun. I actually have 2 bow staffs over here. I have like different versions that I still, practice sometimes. But it was really cool to like learn that skill. And I think it helped me drop into the character more. I think once I had kind of that in my body, I think that the trident was such a huge part of like Coral and who she was. So
In definitive, Mackenzie Lansing, this is a skill that you will carry for the rest of your life, even when you will be portraying other characters. And I can make a direct connection with Nina, who you will be able to protect with that trident in that feature film named As Well in New York.
Yeah, All's Well in New York. It should be coming out this fall in select theaters, but select theaters all around the US, so you should be able to see it. It won Best Screenplay at the Tribeca Film Festival. It has a lot of wonderful actors in it. Elizabeth Rodriguez, Max Casella, Michael Rispoli, Bobby Cannavale, Liza Colon-Zayas from The Bear, and the list goes on and on and on, because Elizabeth Rodriguez, who co-wrote this with Ben Snyder and produced it, sort of got all of her longtime, actor friends to kind of come in and work on this movie, even if it was just for a cameo. So we had this kind of all-star cast on this very, indie movie. It's a story about New York. It's also about Latinx women in New York City, which I think is pretty cool. Not my character, obviously, but other characters. And I think Nina was a really fun character to play. She's somebody who's been through a lot, who's had a lot of trauma, and who's still kind of, I would say, sort of delicate inside in spite of that, and is sort of desperately looking for anything that looks like a family to sort of latch onto. That's my character, but overall it's just a really great film. It's beautifully shot, and yeah, I encourage everybody to go see it when it comes out this fall.
We encourage Mackenzie Lansing, everyone, to witness that feature film when it will be coming out in theaters in the fall. And if I understood correctly, you are actually carrying a baby.
Yes, I am pregnant in this movie. I had to wear one of those pregnancy bellies on set, and it was really hard to take off, so I just didn't take it off for lunch. And people give you, people are nicer to you when you're pregnant, I'll say that much. But if you drop something, it's gone forever. I did learn that. So
Absolutely, Mackenzie Lansing. It is very important to protect the baby and not drop it. And this feature film is named As Well in New York. And you are also living in New York City. And I would love to retrace that trajectory, because you grew up in a French town named Villebon-sur-Yvette. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you went from Villebon-sur-Yvette to New York City?
Yeah, I don't have any family in the industry, so some of it was work and a lot of it was luck. A lot of it was chance. But I think more than anything, I decided that I wanted to do this, and I decided that not doing it wasn't an option. So after that play that you mentioned at the beginning, that I did in a theater at Chilly-Mazarin, I ended up, which for people who don't know, I did it in an MJC, which is like a community theater. But anyway, after that play, I kind of decided that this is what I wanted to do. And I was lucky enough to have parents who, as much as they couldn't, necessarily help me get there, were morally very supportive, and, wanted to support me in anything that I did. So I applied for schools, in Paris, and Le Cours Florent, stuff like that. And I applied to a couple schools in the US and got turned down by most of them. But I got into a school in New York on Madison Avenue, And I think it was the only school I got into in the US. And I ended up moving here, and I went to school there. And they have sort of like a third year theater company showcase thing. And I did that, and I got a manager out of that and started auditioning. And, auditioned for a really, really long time before things started to really take off for me. Came to New York and sort of had to, I think, figure out who I was before I was able to start booking stuff. I did a few smaller roles. I did, it was so long ago, but Red Oaks, Tell Me the Story, TV shows like that, small parts. And that eventually led to some recurring stuff on The Deuce, and then later Mayor of Easttown, and so on and so forth.
In conclusion, you followed the last sentence of Roberto Zucco, which is, in French, tournez votre visage vers l'Orient et il s'y déplacera. Et si vous tournez votre visage vers l'Occident, il vous suivra. Thank you very much, Mackenzie Lansing.
Thank you so much for having me.